As we head into 2026, I wish I could tell you that next year things are going to look up. But given the DRAM shortage situation caused by the mass demand from AI servers and the way that's going to jack up prices for consumer electronics as a whole, including gaming devices, due to the fact that demand is far exceeding supply as a result of the vast majority of that demand coming from AI companies who are hoarding DRAM, 2026 and beyond are looking to be like thoroughly messed up when it comes to how consumer electronic products will be priced and how difficult it'll be and how much less accessible they'll be thanks to AI. And I've already covered this topic in 3 past videos. There's this one right here talking about just when we started getting rumblings of DRAM prices going up and how this will impact console and PC prices moving forward. Then I released another video that discussed how OpenAI specifically screwed all of us over by engaging in this deal with Samsung and HK Hynix, 2 of the biggest suppliers of RAM, essentially buying out 40% of their entire RAM supply. And that's what kind of kickstarted the mass panic and the mass hoarding of RAM because of AI competitors who, kind of fear what OpenAI might be up to, especially with them hoarding all this RAM. And then there is this video right here discussing how another one of the biggest RAM companies, the 3rd largest RAM company in particular, Micron, abandoned the consumer business in favor of supplying RAM for AI companies. And so what has happened since? What is the outlook looking like? Well, in terms of what RAM prices are looking at right now, here we have an example that somebody highlighted. Corsair Vengeance RGB 64 gigabytes of DDR5 RAM, 2 sticks of 32 gigabytes. That is now over $900. And I actually went to the specific listing to look at the price history. And you can see right here that from September to December, the price jump has been astronomical. We're looking at a product that once upon a time was in the high $200. And we have seen those prices skyrocket so much as a result of these shortages that we even saw prices go up as high as $950, with it currently sitting at a little over $900, $906. That's almost 4 times the price that this product was originally. That's where we're at with consumer RAM. We're looking at a situation where RAM is as expensive as what PCs can cost. The impact of this DRAM shortage isn't just RAM, but anything that utilizes memory of this variety, whether it's SSDs or graphics cards. And already we're seeing reports from NVIDIA that they are about to fuck over consumers even more by planning to reduce RTX 50 production by up to 40% in early 2026. GPU supply in general is about to tank significantly, especially because it's difficult to accrue DRAM required for this particular component. All the while, demand is staying the same, if not increasing. And when demand far exceeds supply, what you get are price hikes to compensate for the fact that there's just not enough supply to meet that demand, because that supply has been hoarded by a very powerful few. And so people are highlighting how AI bros killing PC gaming is some kind of bizarre cosmic comedy. And, this kind of stuff is going viral online with people in disbelief at how utterly fucked the PC components market currently is, how utterly fucked electronics are. And the real kicker is that even the corporations themselves are coming out and talking about how long this shortage of RAM and price inflation will last. People were hoping that this was, very temporary and that this is something that will end sooner rather than later. But nope. Right here we have Dexerto reporting that Micron has warned that RAM shortages will end up lasting well beyond 2026, noting that more memory is essential for the AI experience. Here's specifically what Micron CEO had to say in the Dexerto article itself. It is highlighted that Sanjay Mehrotra, who is Micron's CEO, issued a statement directly during the company's latest earnings call stating, quote, sustained and strong industry demand along with supply constraints are contributing to tight market conditions, and we expect these conditions to persist beyond calendar 2026. Over the last few months, our customers' AI data center build-out plans have driven sharp increase in demand forecasts for memory and storage. We believe that the aggregate industry supply will remain substantially short of the demand for the foreseeable future. And that's the thing. Instead of spreading the love of RAM to as many customers as possible, the customer that matters to these companies most are these companies who are building huge AI data centers because they are buying RAM en masse at a level that makes it a lot more profitable for companies like Micron to just work with those AI data centers and sell as much RAM as possible and generate as much revenue for the sake of corporate agendas involving, pleasing the shareholders and giving investors confidence to invest further and allowing their company to rise in the ranks. Even though companies like Micron know that selling most of their RAM to AI companies will completely fuck over customers, the end result is that they get to make more money faster. And so, as far as they're concerned, screw the average consumer. The statement continues, together, these demand and supply factors are driving tight industry conditions across DRAM and NAND, and we expect tightness to persist through and beyond calendar of 2026. This comes in shortly after they announced that they're exiting the Crucial consumer business, Crucial being a brand of Micron's that is focused on delivering consumer-level RAM. And Micron being the third largest supplier of RAM in the world. Them exiting the consumer business means that the shortage is just going to get that much worse, especially when combined with the fact that the other two largest RAM suppliers who supply RAM at an even higher level than Micron, Samsung and SK Hynix, have also signaled that constraints are likely to continue as they continue to make the choice to prioritize AI companies and supplying hordes of RAM to AI data centers, seeking short-term financial gains and engaging in this gold rush of selling RAM, even if it means long-term consequences. It's just corporate greed at its finest, and all of this is going to be reinforced because of the fact that companies who are engaging in this practice of prioritizing AI companies are achieving record performance amidst surging memory prices. Micron right here reported that they did record numbers, reporting a record revenue of $13.6 billion for the first quarter of its financial year, September through November, growing 57% year over year and 21% quarter over quarter, according to the company's earning release. That right there says it all. That's what it's been all about, getting the numbers up and pleasing their real customers, who are the investors, by selling their RAM to their most profitable and their most lucrative customers, the specific few AI companies and AI data centers. And all the while, we're seeing major RAM manufacturers like Samsung not only also playing the same game, but getting to that point where, because of the shortage that AI is causing for RAM, they also are increasing prices for DDR5 RAM, with recent reports highlighting how we could be seeing price increases of over 100% in the short term. And then in the long-term future, who knows how much more prices will go up. And for gaming in particular, what that means is that for current devices like Xbox Series and PlayStation 5 and Nintendo Switch and Switch 2, once their respective companies run out of the supply of manufactured consoles that were made when RAM prices were significantly lower, they will have to significantly jack up the prices of those gaming consoles. What that means is that for upcoming devices like Steam Machine, there'll have to be a lot of considerations about its price point, and we'll likely see a higher price point than we would have normally seen had this RAM situation not happened the way it did. Had RAM prices remained the same, had this RAM shortage and massive RAM inflation had not occurred as a result of AI companies hoarding. And if indeed this whole situation will last well beyond 2026, to the point where these kinds of price increases will still remain when, companies are thinking about their next-gen consoles, what that means is that PlayStation 6 will likely end up being significantly more expensive than it would have otherwise been. The next Xbox PC console hybrid, that in particular, is especially fucked, especially due to the fact that there are reports out there that Microsoft really wasn't prepared for the recent RAM shortage and the price inflation. A lot of companies tend to have a stockpile, a war chest of RAM available to ride out situations like these. Microsoft seemingly didn't have that, so that's probably going to be among the companies that's going to be most impacted by this RAM shortage and the RAM price hike. As far as the biggest manufacturers of gaming hardware are concerned, Microsoft is among the ones that are in most trouble, whereas there are reports that PlayStation and Sony are well prepared with a significant war chest of RAM supply to be able to ride out this wave a little more. But even Sony and PlayStation eventually will run out if this situation persists, and the current prediction is that it will persist well beyond 2026. Things that are normally a lot more financially accessible, like computers and gaming dedicated consoles and whatnot, are about to become something that, only a higher class of people will really be able to afford at a reasonable level. And all of this is without considering the myriad other ways in which AI is harmful to society, whether it's its negative environmental impact that it's being discussed as researchers look into the consequences of AI becoming such a prominent part of society. That's without mentioning all of the deepfakes and misinformation that has become prevalent as a result of AI becoming such a powerful tool, and it also becoming such a trusted tool when in reality AI, it doesn't function well enough for it to be a truly reliable source of information. And not to mention it's so powerful that it's very easy to create misinformation, especially in the form of images and videos that are entirely made up, that are entirely fake. And so we're starting to see legislators scrambling to implement laws and rules and legislations that will help combat this. There are also the ethical questions of how generative AI in particular works, with how it basically is trained on artwork that people didn't give permission for that technology to be trained on, and what it ultimately outputs, a lot of people are perceiving to be essentially stolen work from artists, especially because oftentimes when you look at AI-generated artwork, you can oftentimes trace the origin of what that AI artwork stole from. So for example, right here we have this individual saying, can you believe the stunning visual was created by AI? And it's essentially this like Iron Man-esque transformation sequence, except you can see right here, it's not really anything new. Sure, there are differences, but when you look at the source material, which is this scene right here from Iron Man 2, I mean, it's apparent that that is basically stolen work, except the homework got changed a little bit. The references that AI draws from doesn't ultimately lead to unique creations, but it's just a regurgitation of what already exists. Or, recently with Call of Duty Black Ops 7, we saw that it was littered with AI slop. And one look at this and you can tell that this was all from essentially Ghibli artwork that was, turned into AI, and this is what it spit out. This is straight up just like someone's unique visual identity being stolen and remixed and then being implemented into a game that is part of a multi-billion-dollar franchise. And this is how corporations choose to use AI, not for the betterment of society, but to take shortcuts, to cut costs, to not hire people, and ultimately to output slop that is of low quality, just a complete disregard for the artistic medium itself, and a complete disregard for the fact that customers are paying money for the highest quality product possible. A lot of these corporations don't care about quality. They just care about shipping something that is monetizable enough. And yes, there are plenty of research and reports showing that AI layoffs are absolutely a thing, are far outpacing new jobs, and that corporations are very much consciously choosing to replace humans with AI automation that often does a worse job than what humans are capable of. Because while what AI does is very impressive, it doesn't have, just that human intuition and that human kind of ingenuity. It doesn't have the human touch that allows AI to do the jobs that humans should be doing. I mean, we're seeing that especially with YouTube recently, and how the AI that YouTube has implemented is wrongfully banning channels. It's wrongfully flagging channels that shouldn't be flagged and demonetizing them and saying that they've broken the YouTube policies. And then on an artistic level, beyond all of the ethical questions surrounding stolen artwork, there's the actual quality output where you get garbage like this.
Skipper, no please, no Skipper. Hey, stay with me. Come on, Skipper. Hey, you gotta fight. Don't die on me, Skip.
Or there's, garbage like this.
You stupid vampire. Don't you know that I can't even catch rabbits?
You can escape now, landlord. I can at least buy you some time.
Hold on. What are you even talking about?
It's just trash. Especially in the artistic realm, where what makes art is unique human experiences. It's, genuine human expression, stuff that AI just is not capable of. That's where AI especially just falls flat, which is why the backlash surrounding AI is so significant. I mean, it's just screwing over consumers at a financial level and at an affordability level for certain components. It's screwing over people when it comes to jobs, when it comes to art. Just in so many different facets, AI has not been used to genuinely better humanity. But what's encouraging to see is that there are a lot of discussions happening constantly online, and when more nefarious uses of AI are detected by the masses, you tend to see people rallying against that stuff. Now, at the same time, I do think AI discussion does require nuance, with people having to learn about the different kinds of AI, and that's a video that I think I do want to make down the line. But, like generative AI is not necessarily the same as certain kinds of machine learning where, that stuff's actually really useful for handling certain processes that normally would be tedious if done manually by humans. But it's another thing to use stuff like generative AI at a level where it's basically usage of stolen artwork to produce slop that ultimately aims to, replace real artists with lower quality, great output from machines that don't really understand the human experience and don't express things humanly. And there's just such a disregard for consequences like the degradation of art, the environmental impact, the spread of misinformation, and all of the ways in which this technology can be abused. If used correctly, it can be a phenomenal tool that can genuinely yield phenomenal advances in certain fields that would be beneficial to society. But that benefiting society is not the concern of corporations who are obsessed with AI. For them, it's about, making money and being first to a race that's trying to fix certain problems that really don't exist. And until this stuff is regulated, until there are checks and balances in place, this is a topic that continues to be called out and discussed. And, we need to understand the nuances of the technology as well. But also, we can't let it go unfettered as it has been right now. But when it comes to RAM shortages and inflation in particular, hearing that this is something that will go, well into next year and beyond, and it being something that currently, is indefinite, is incredibly disheartening to hear. And it's also something that you have to be prepared for and something you have to know about so that you can kind of brace yourself and so you can prepare yourself now for a future that's looking pretty bleak when it comes to, normally affordable electronic components and how that will have a ripple effect on just electronics in general moving forward, certainly in the realm of gaming. So yeah, I'll keep you guys updated on how all of this develops, but the latest news on this front is not good for the, short-term future, even medium-term future, but maybe the long-term future will look brighter if people speak up enough against this stuff and if enough regulators get involved where they can actually put some checks and balances that don't allow for stuff like this to happen, because this is out of control at this stage. But that's one man's take. I'd love to hear what your thoughts and opinions are on the RAM shortage situation in the comments below. And to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out.